Hello, my name is Mathias and welcome to the FPL Scope and the weekly Wildcard draft for Gameweek 9, where I take a look at what I think is the best squad to have in Fantasy Premier League going forward in the next 4 to 5 game weeks and beyond in Fantasy Premier League. And we're going to do this as we always do, like an NBA or NFL style draft, where the number one pick is the player that I deem the most important player to have currently in FPL, and then the 15th player that I pick is going to be the player that I'm the most unsure about in the squad. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some players dropping out and potentially some players that are pretty popular that I haven't included in the team either. So let's just start with number one. And we have another new number one this time around, and it is Mohamed Salah. He has gone up from number 2 last week, but now I think Salah is the most essential player to have in FPL currently. I think all of his matches are really good, especially the next 4. As you can see there, Everton at home, Nottingham Forest at home, Luton away, and Brentford at home. All 4 fixtures where you could potentially captain him, but I might also go without him as captain in all those game weeks as well, which maybe goes against the argument of him being number 1, but I think Salah's going to score a lot of points. It's just a matter of which games you captain him in. That's the big question, because there are some other good potential options in other game weeks, namely the number 2 and number 4 players in this draft that I'll talk more about. But Salah plays for a Liverpool team that is still one of the best teams in the league, especially offensively. Salah has nailed. He's on penalties. We all know all the credentials for Salah. He usually comes back from the international break pretty decent shape as well. Doesn't really play the most minutes for Egypt in matches that they don't really need to win, and I think that's going to be the case this time around as well in this game week. But yeah, I think for game week 9, I think there might be a better captain's option. We'll get to that when we get to that player. But still, if you're captain Salah against Everton at home, I think that's still a really good fixture. Salah has been really good traditionally against Everton. And Liverpool at home at Anfield is usually a really good match regardless. And seeing as they have 3 of the next 4 at home, and then the 4th game being against Luton, which is one of the weaker sides in the league, Salah just seems like a no-brainer at this point. He is a premium player, but he is definitely worth the price. And you can also fit him into a squad with several other premium players as well. So that's not really that big of a deal. So yeah, Salah is number 1 for me, and I think he's going to stay number 1 for a while because Liverpool have some really good fixtures. I think they have in game week 13, I think they face Man City, and then after that again they have 3 or 4 great fixtures again after that. So yeah, Salah is definitely a really good player to have, and that's why I have him as my number 1 player to have currently in Fantasy Premier League, and that's why he's the number 1 pick. Number 2, we have Erling Braut Haaland, who has been mostly number 1 this whole season. Last week he was down to number 3, and now he's moved up to number 2 because the number 1 guy has dropped down quite a bit, as we'll talk about at the end of this video. But Haaland still has really good matches. I know Brighton is deemed to be a grey fixture, same with Man United as well, deemed to be a grey fixture. Chelsea, grey fixture, meaning that it's like not entirely difficult, it's not entirely easy either, it's somewhere in the middle. But all these matches, Man City can definitely score 3 or 4 goals, and Haaland can definitely score 3 or 4 goals himself as well. I know he hasn't been the same as last season, this season so far. He started off the season really well, but now he's looking slightly less like a machine, like the auto captain that we had him as last season. So yeah, there's still reasons to be cautious about Haaland. I think defenses are more keyed into him. We talked about Salah just now, and Salah was kind of the same. His first season back in the Premier League with Liverpool, he scored 30 plus goals, was amazing. He's been amazing since that as well, Salah, but he has never really reached those heights of that first season, which was the record-breaking season in FPL with 303 points in FPL. So I think Haaland is slightly weaker this season, and I think Man City are slightly weaker this season as well, especially offensively. They have less experienced players, like Gundogan left, Mahrez left, De Bruyne has been injured this whole season as well. So I think Haaland just has a bit more of a tough time this season than he had last season, which means that we should have more captain's options. But this game week against Brighton at home, I think you have a prime candidate for being captain this week in Haaland. Haaland has played in the international break for Norway, lost against Spain, didn't really get to do much there because Spain just controlled the game totally. The first game though against was it Cyprus or Georgia? I can't even remember. Haaland scored 2 goals, really nice goals as well. So yeah, he's still a really good goal scorer, as especially the 2-0 goal that he scored there was fantastic, fantastic finish from Haaland. We know what he can do. He's not going to be this player that scores like less than 20 goals in a Premier League season. I think he's always going to be 20 plus, but 30 plus, bordering on 40 goals per season in the Premier League, I don't think that's going to be the norm with Haaland, but he's still an amazing pick, still an amazing captaincy option, especially for this game week and the game week against Bournemouth in particular. Those are the game weeks that I might potentially captain him. It just depends on Salah against Luton away. That might also be a captaincy decision where I go between Salah or Haaland every single day leading up to the game week. But yeah, Haaland's still an amazing prospect, and yeah, comes in at number 2. Pretty self-explanatory. Most people have Haaland. Some people have braved the season on without him, at least until like the double game week in Game Week 20, when he's probably going to get a double game week, and most people will triple captain him probably. But yeah, Haaland is still a fantastic player to have, and yeah, it's just if you have to choose between Salah and Haaland, I would probably choose Salah, because I think Salah just in general has better matches across the board, and is also a more like proven Premier League player, I guess. I mean, Haaland is still like, he's going to score a lot of goals, like I said, but Salah has proved it 6 seasons straight that he's going to be amazing every single season. And we just haven't seen that from Haaland yet, but that's probably going to come eventually. But yeah, Haaland slightly behind Salah. Number 3, we have a pretty, I guess we say pretty big dip, but I think Diaby is still a fantastic pick as well. He's obviously the number 3 pick. He was number 4 last week. So I have a lot of faith in Diaby, even though he was subbed off early last game. Only got 2 points, a blank last time around. Got subbed off after like 61 minutes, had to go off. But he was also carrying like a slight injury going into that game. So I don't think you really can judge them entirely on that game. And Aston Villa have proven to be a much better home side than away side as well. And the next 3 of the next 4 again are at home for Diaby. So I think he is still a really, really, really good option. Especially for the price that he is. He's 6.79, I think. And even though his underlying numbers aren't the best, he has proven that he can score goals and score FPL points throughout the season as well. He's just been really consistent. Aston Villa have been really consistent, especially at home this season. So I expect Diaby and Aston Villa to kick on and score several goals, especially in the home games that they have coming up. Not the best game against West Ham now, because West Ham are a pretty decent team, but at the same time, West Ham have some of the worst expected goals conceded numbers so far this season. That's partly down to West Ham facing tough opposition, but Aston Villa away is really tough opposition. So I can definitely see Diaby scoring 1 goal or 2, or potentially having an assist as well on top of that. Even though, it should be noted, West Ham have a really good track record against Aston Villa the last few seasons. West Ham pretty much beat Aston Villa every single time, and yeah, as a West Ham fan, I can attest to that. But I still think Diaby is a really good player, especially the game weeks after that, against Luton at home, Nottingham Forest away, and then Fulham at home. 3 really good fixtures. Maybe the away fixture against Nottingham Forest isn't the best, but Luton at home and Fulham at home especially are really, really, really good fixtures. And his price, his top level as well, I think Diaby is much better than Aston Villa, frankly. I think he should be in a top 4 club. He's just that good of a player. So yeah, Diaby makes a whole lot of sense for me in your wildcard team currently. Then the 4th pick is another player that is pretty good looking player going forward. That is Bukayo Saka. He was kind of struggling with an injury before the international break. He's also been left off of the England squad, I think, or he hasn't really been featured that much for England because he has struggled with some injuries this whole season pretty much. But his underlying numbers this season have actually been better than last season when he was still a really good FPL pick, and especially now with Arsenal having really good fixtures coming up, and Arsenal looking like a really good team in general, and Saka's underlying numbers, like I said, better than last year. He's still on penalties mainly, but he's going to give away some penalties from time to time, which is kind of annoying as an FPL owner, but it's kind of admirable to see from Saka as well, giving a penalty to Havertz to get his confidence up, giving penalties away to other players. There is, for example, Martinelli as well, who could potentially take penalties. He's taken some penalties in the past, so maybe he's the next one to be gifted a penalty from Saka as well. So Martinelli is definitely someone you could consider on top of this, but I think Saka is just the more secure option currently because, yeah, he's going to play, at least when he's not injured or injury prone, potentially injured, he's going to play 90 plus minutes for Arsenal. He's going to be the penalty taker mostly, and he posts really good numbers, and he's always been overperforming his numbers as well. So Saka, definitely looking into him as a captaincy option in Game Week 10 against Sheffield United and in Game Week 12 against Burnley. 2 really, really, really good fixtures where, yeah, I might just go with Saka. So that's my thing with Salah. Like, I have Salah number 1, but I still think maybe Haaland and Saka are the better rotational captains, because you could go with Haaland captain against Brighton this time at home, then Saka at home to Sheffield United in Game Week 10, and then Haaland in Game Week 11 against Bournemouth at home, and then Saka against Burnley at home in Game Week 12. But Salah is also a player that could all of a sudden explode and be that standout captaincy option. So if he bangs against Everton, scores 2 or 3 goals, you probably want to captain him against Nottingham Forest, even though Saka has Sheffield United at home. And the same could be said about the Luton game versus Holland and the Brentford game versus Saka against Burnley as well. So yeah, captaincy rotation is going to be really interesting in the next few game weeks, and I think that's going to be a pretty deciding factor in terms of who's winning a couple mini leagues, who's going to win the FPL overall league as well. I think it could be kind of decided between who's captaining who the next few game weeks, and that's going to be really interesting to see. But I think Saka, especially in game week 10 and game week 12, he is probably the best captain's option in both those game weeks currently, I think, if he stays away from injuries. So Saka is definitely someone you should take a look at for your team. I have missed the number 4 pick because I'm still not 100% sure. He has those 2 kind of difficult fixtures away against Chelsea, who are a pretty good defensive side so far this season, and away against Newcastle, who are definitely a really good offensive side or defensive side. So I think Saka is, he doesn't have the best fixtures in terms of the next 4, but he has 2 really good standout fixtures where you could potentially captain him. So I think he should be a must. He should be in pretty much every single wildcard squad currently, but yeah, you could go without him. You could go with someone like Martinelli or Ødegaard if you prefer that as well. So those are also some decent options, but I think Saka is just a safer option with the penalties and the minutes and all that stuff put together. Next up, number 5, we have the best value defender currently, and that is Mathias still, even though he blanked last game week, didn't he? Or did he get an assist or a clean sheet? I can't remember. I think he blanked actually last game week. It's been a while now since the international break, but either way, Cash, just like Diaby, is going to have fantastic fixtures, especially after they get past this West Ham fixture, which is kind of a tricky fixture for them. They're going to have one of the best fixture runs of all the teams in the Premier League. So yeah, Cash, he's also super offensive. He plays as a right winger sometimes. He's already shown that he can score 2 goals in the same game. He can get clean sheets. He can get assists. He's just shown that he could get pretty much everything you can or you want from a defender in FPL. So Cash pretty much is just like a no-brainer in this team. He is starting to get a bit costly now. He's up to like 5.0 or 5.1 even potentially soon. So yeah, Cash is still, even for that price, I think he's really good value considering the where he plays on the pitch as well. I think Cash is just really great value, and Aston Villa are really good, especially at home. Like I said, most of the things that I said about Diaby counts for Cash as well, except that Cash can get some clean sheet points as well, and probably isn't quite as attacking as Diaby, even though we might want it sometimes. But yeah, Cash is for me the best defender to have in the game because of Aston Villa's fixtures, and just Cash in general has shown in previous Premier League seasons as well that he can get a lot of points when Aston Villa are good and they have good fixtures, and that's what they are currently. So yeah, Cash makes all the sense in the world. Then we have Gabriel Magalhaes, who has gone up from number 12 last week or 2 weeks ago to number 6 this time around, because I think Arsenal's fixtures, like I said, are having an uptick now. And I think even a Newcastle fixture, which might be a tough fixture offensively for Arsenal, like Saka and stuff, I still think, even though Newcastle are scoring a lot of goals currently, I still think that could be a potential clean sheet game for Gabriel Magalhaes. But that's not the featured game for Gabriel. That is the game week 10 game against Sheffield United at home. I think that's the perfect game for Gabriel to get one of his goals, or maybe even 2 goals in the same game, because Sheffield United on defensive set pieces are just terrible, and Gabriel Magalhaes has been one of the best, if not the best, defenders in the Premier League when it comes to offensive set pieces. So I think that game is definitely a game week where I really, really want to have Gabriel in my squad, and with a wildcard, you should definitely have him in because Arsenal have really good fixtures defensively. Even against Chelsea as well, I think they could have really good chances of keeping a clean sheet as well in that game week, in the next game week 9. So yeah, Gabriel with his goal threat, with his clean sheet potential, Arsenal have been really solid defensively, and you might even want to double up defensively at Arsenal. I've seen some people do that as well, and that's one of the advantages to using your wildcard now, because a lot of people who wildcarded last week or 2 game weeks ago don't really have that many Arsenal players because they had some tough fixtures. They had Man City, they had Liverpool in those 2 past game weeks. So now is the perfect time to jump on Arsenal bandwagon and have at least 2, potentially 3 Arsenal players. So yeah, I'm going to discuss a couple more Arsenal players potentially towards the end of this video as well. But Gabriel for me is the standout defensive pick. He has the goal threat and he has the clean sheet potential, and I think he is pretty much nailed now. You saw at the start of the season Arteta sort of experimenting with a different backline where Gabriel didn't play. He also experimented with Havertz in midfield, which he has also sort of gone away from. So yeah, I think Arteta is kind of going more back to basics now, and that bodes well for Gabriel, who was a really good player last season and was one of the favorite FPL picks before the season, before he got dropped and was all of a sudden out of the team. But I don't think that's going to be a problem now. And considering Gabriel is now 4.7 as well in terms of price, that's just too good of a deal to not take. So I think Gabriel is a really good player to have in FPL currently. Number 7, we have Kaoru Mitoma, and this is another good reason to wildcard either in Gameweek 10 or Gameweek 9 if you have a wildcard. Especially if you don't have most of these players that I'm going to present to you in this video, because Mitoma has proven all season and pretty much ever since he got the chance to play regularly for Brighton last season under De Zerbi, he has proven that he is the most lethal Brighton player and the most nailed Brighton player as well in terms of attacking output. And when you look at their fixtures after the Man City fixture now in Gameweek 9, Fulham at home, Everton away, Sheffield United at home, 3 fantastic matches where Mitoma can score several goals, can get assists, can get bonus points, can get pretty much everything you want, and he's still like 6.5, 6.6 potentially. So he's still really good value, and Brighton are another team that is kind of being overlooked now in the past few game weeks in terms of the wildcard. Now they're getting some good fixtures again, and that's going to be really good for Mitoma, who has been a really good player ever since he stepped onto the pitch for Brighton and got playing time regularly last season. So Mitoma, another fantastic pick coming in at number 7, our 4th midfielder. But then we have another striker, and that is Ollie Watkins. We are tripling up on Aston Villa players with this wildcard draft. I think Watkins, he had obviously the 23-point haul against Brighton 2 game weeks ago in Game Week 7. In Game Week 8, he only got 5 points, but he could have had so much more. He almost scored at the end of the game. He had another big chance where he was also pushed over, probably should have won a penalty as well. He's not on penalties, sadly, for Aston Villa, but even without him taking penalties, I still think he is a really good option. And yeah, I think tripling up on Aston Villa, especially with the home fixtures that they have now, where they can score several goals, and Watkins is going to be there in amongst the goals every time Aston Villa score. Both him and Diaby, I think tripling up on Aston Villa with 2 attacking assets from Aston Villa is pretty sensible currently. Watkins is kind of pricey. He's 8.2 currently. It's kind of why I'm potentially leaning towards having a different forward, and that's why Watkins is not like right atop of this list, because I still think there are other potential candidates that I want rather than Watkins. I do prefer Diaby as an option because he is cheaper. They have pretty much been pretty close in terms of points, but Watkins has gotten a bit more points, but he's also 1.5 more expensive than Diaby. So yeah, I think Diaby is just a better option because of his price, really. But doubling up is definitely something you can do. Watkins has proven to be really consistent as well. I think he's going to be more consistent than he's going to be explosive. I think the Brighton game was sort of an anomaly. We saw last season that he went on this run with like a goal every game pretty much. I think he went like with 12 game weeks, he got point returns in 10 of them, I think, or something like that, a run like that. And he could easily do that again, especially with the fixtures that they have coming up now. So yeah, Watkins doubling up on Aston Villa is a good idea in my books, at least. Then number 9, we have Pedro Porro. He's also a new player. He comes in rather than Destiny Udogie. I think Pedro Porro is a better asset currently, especially if you haven't had Udogie at the start of the season. I've had Udogie personally in my own team since he was 4.5, but now Udogie is 4.9, and that's only 0.2 away from Pedro Porro, who is a better attacking asset for Spurs. Porro also seems to be pretty much nailed. He didn't play in Game Week 1, but since then he's played in every single match, pretty much 90 minutes every single match as well. And he has a lot of attacking potential, and defensively as well. I think Spurs have really good fixtures, more so defensively than offensively. The next game week against Fulham is both good in terms of offensive output and defensive output for Spurs. But after that, against Crystal Palace, Chelsea and Wolverhampton, I think they could keep some clean sheets. But offensively, kind of more tough fixtures. So as you can see, I currently don't have a Spurs player so far in the midfield. Maybe the final midfield option will be a Spurs player, who will see. But defensively, I think their fixtures are better than offensively, and that's why I think Pedro Porro is definitely someone you should consider. He is not that expensive. He's really attacking. He can score some goals. He can get some assists. Towards the end of the last season, actually, he was like one of the best performing defenders, like comparatively. Like you could potentially even compare him to someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold at his best, especially for his price. In terms of the numbers he produced last season, I think he had like 12 starts, 3 goals, 3 assists or something towards the end of the last season. And he's sort of carried that onwards this season, being super attacking under the Ange Postecoglou system. So yeah, I think he's the best Spurs fullback. You could potentially also double up on Spurs defensively. But that also also takes out the possibility of having double Spurs midfielders, which you might have already. But if you're on a wildcard, I think defensively is more where you should target Spurs, because they have some really good defensive fixtures against the likes of Crystal Palace away, who are a really good defensive team, but are really inept going forward without Jesse, without Michael Elise and those guys. So yeah, Pedro Porro has pretty much everything you want in a defender in FPL as well. Just like Cash and Gabriel, I really like defenders that could get some points offensively as well. So that's why I have the likes of Pedro Porro and Cash, who are really offensive players, to go into the squad, into the wildcard squad for Gameweek 9. Number 10, we have the final midfielder, and it is not a Spurs midfielder, so spoilers, no Madison, no Son. I'm going to go back to that eventually. Son especially is a major shift from last weekly wildcard draft, and I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video, because he has dropped out since last time. So yeah, I'm going to talk more about those guys later, but the reason for me having Bowen is the fact that I think Bowen is looking amazing so far this season. He has really good underlying stats, he has really good stats in general as well, FPL points. And that's even against really tough opposition. And West Ham have looked just amazing this season. Bowen has looked back to his best, back to the 200 plus points he got in the 2020 or 2021-22 season. So yeah, he's looking really good, and he could potentially play as a striker as well, because that's what David Moyes has talked about. Mikel Antonio is currently the only trusted forward or striker for West Ham, but he's injury prone. He can't play 90 minutes every game. And Bowen has proven that he could play as a de facto striker, sort of up front, with the help of the likes of Lucas Paqueta and stuff right behind him. So that could bode well for Bowen if he plays up front, because we've seen Mikel Antonio in the past and Marco Nautic in the past for West Ham excel after going from being a winger to being a forward for West Ham under David Moyes. So I think Jared Bowen could do the same as well. Offensively for West Ham. But even if he plays as a right winger still, he's still proven that he can score a lot of goals from that position. He's not on penalties, sadly. Again, he missed a couple penalties last season, was it? Or 2 seasons ago, I think. So he's not going to be on penalties. He's not going to be on most set pieces either because of James Ward-Prowse. But in terms of just open play, he is the most lethal player for West Ham. And he's also the most trusted player for West Ham as well. So you could go with someone like James Ward-Prowse. Potentially, Mohamed Kudus could also be a potential player eventually, but not for this game week especially, because Kudus has been playing in the international break. Bowen has been playing as well, because he was finally called up to the England squad, but he has played pretty close to home, or he has played at home pretty much for England, so his travel shouldn't be that tough. And Bowen always plays 90 plus minutes for West Ham. He's been getting some rests in the cups and stuff, because West Ham have that broad of a squad now that they can play other players and rest their better players for the league. And Bowen is one of those players who's going to play every single game in the league pretty much 90 minutes plus every single game as well. And he has really good stats, like I said. So yeah, Bowen is the final midfielder in this team. So let's move on to the next player, which is our first goalkeeper. And again, we have another West Ham player. It is Alphonse Areola, who's been one of the best goalkeepers so far this season. And especially now with the fixtures turning to become much easier for West Ham, Areola, for his price of 4.2, I think he is the favorite goalkeeper to have currently in FPL. The one thing about this though, because you might not want to double up on West Ham defense, maybe you want to go with a defender from West Ham instead, like one of the players in the defensive line. Emerson Palmieri has low-key been really offensive this season. He is actually a decent option in defense. Kurt Zouma, I think, is always a good option. He's really good at set pieces, has already scored a goal so far this season. He is the captain, he is nailed, he is fantastic. Could make a case for Fegard as well. He's also a really good goal scorer in terms of set pieces. Slightly more at risk to losing his position, I think, in the league than Zouma, so I prefer Zouma over Aguerd. But then finally, we also have Vladimir Soufal, who's probably the most popular FPL option currently for the West Ham defenders. He's also really good. He has assisted in 4 straight games now. He's getting in amongst attacking returns as well for West Ham. So in terms of defenders, West Ham have a lot of good defenders, but none of them are as cheap as Areola, and that's why I think Areola is the preferred defender to have from West Ham. You could potentially also double up with West Ham defense, but I don't think that's 100% wise, because West Ham defensively so far this season haven't really been the best in terms of defensive clean sheets and stuff, or defensive numbers in general. But Areola is getting a lot of shots at him, and he's saving a lot of shots, getting saves, getting bonus points. He even saved a penalty this season. So yeah, Areola seems like the best goalkeeper option currently, and that's why he comes in as my number 1 goalkeeper for this game week. Number 12, we have Dan Burn, and he does not have quite as good of a goal threat as the other defenders that I have currently, but he is also playing for the best defensive team, potentially, maybe aside from Arsenal. But yeah, Dan Burn, he's only 4.6 still. He has actually proven that he could score some goals, potentially. He scored in the Champions League against PSG. He scored in the league against Sheffield United. He was actually pretty close to scoring against West Ham as well, so his attacking output has actually been improved lately as well. Especially with his price, he still seems like the most trusted left back at Newcastle. Could even hospitalize as a centre back as well for Newcastle when they need that as well. So yeah, I think the big boy Dan Burn is definitely a really good pick for Newcastle. Botman is also a different pick that could also be good. He's about the same price, but I think Burn has slightly more goal threat as well. Even though Botman is more nailed and potentially more bonus prone as well, or has more bonus potential than Burn. But currently, Botman is not fully fit and Burn is, so that's why I prefer Burn. He's also 2 million cheaper than Trippier, and I think that counts in favor of Burn. Obviously, Trippier has a lot more bonus potential. He is getting assists left and right. Trippier as well, so maybe you want to go with Trippier, but for this team, I don't really have the money for Trippier because I would have to sacrifice Watkins, sacrifice a midfielder as well, downgrade a midfielder as well, so I don't really want to do that currently with my team, so that's why I think Burn is the better option than Trippier currently, and that's why I have him in the weekly wildcard squad. Then we have the final defender, and that is 4.0 cheap defender. It is Jared Branthwaite. He's playing every single game now for Everton. He's been really good so far this season as well, even though Everton haven't had the best start to the season, but more and more people are getting their eyes up for Everton, who have actually performed really well in terms of expected goals and expected goals conceded so far this season. They don't have the best fixtures, so Branthwaite is going to be on the bench most game weeks, but for 4.0, he's a decent player you could start if you need to, if you have lots of injuries or several players being rested or something like that. Branthwaite can step in and potentially get some clean sheet points. Maybe not until the Crystal Palace away game, because Liverpool away, you expect them to concede. West Ham away, you expect them to concede. Brighton, you expect them to concede. So yeah, he's someone that is going to be on your bench most likely, but he's also someone, I think he's currently the best 4.0 defender, because I think over the long haul, I think he's going to be the best value. Because yeah, he plays every single game week. He actually has decent goal threat from, especially from the Dutch league that he played in last season. He's proven that he could score some goals. I know Tarkowski is the more like focal point in terms of offensive set pieces for Everton, but Branthwaite could also step in and be amongst the goals eventually. But yeah, for 4.0, I think he's the best backup option to have in defense, so that's why he's in the team. Then next up, we have a goalkeeper. We have a new backup goalkeeper because I think Matt Turner's goalkeeping number 1 days for Nottingham Forest are kind of numbered. He's going to be dropped at some point, but Strakosha seems like is going to be the starting goalkeeper for Brentford for the foreseeable future, for at least the next month, and especially if he plays well, I think he could start being the number 1 goalkeeper as well for Brentford, because Mark Flecken has not looked good at all, and now Flecken has gotten an illness. He's going to be out until mid-November, I think. So Strakosha has every chance in the world to be the starting goalkeeper for Brentford. For only 3.9, that's a bargain. Turner is now 4.1, so that's 0.2 saved as well from having Strakosha, and Areola is going to be the goalkeeper most game weeks anyway. So yeah, I think Strakosha is the best backup goalkeeper to have currently in Fantasy Premier League. And finally, we have another backup as well in attack, and that is Cameron Archer. You could downgrade him to someone like Mitoma for 4.3 or Osula for 4.4 if you don't want to waste the West Ham spot. That could be the way to go, but I think Archer, I think the season has proven as well that you kind of need to have some backup players just in case. And Archer, he has shown at least at points this season that he could score some goals. Sheffield United are a really bad team in general, so maybe not the best player, but that's why he's 15th pick as well. Why I don't have that much faith in him, but I have gone with him rather than going with a cheap midfielder and having 3 up front. I could have done that as well. There are a couple of players that I could be interested in having in attack. I'm going to talk about one of them especially once we look at the players that have dropped out since last time. Because as you can see, we have Strakosha, Pedro Porro, Saka, Mitoma, Bowen, and Archer, who are new. You can see their names are in green. That means that they are new from last game week. They were not part of the Gameweek 8 wildcard draft squad. That means 6 players have dropped out as well. So let's take a look at which players those are. And number 1, this is unprecedented so far this season in the weekly wildcard draft. We've had Son be number 1 in the Gameweek 8 draft to being dropped out entirely in the Gameweek 9 draft. And that is not supposed to happen because I'm supposed to pick players for the next 4 to 5 game weeks. And that's sort of what I thought with Son as well, that I had like a sure thing for the next 4 to 5 game weeks. But as the game week went along, I actually had Son because I thought he was going to be my captain in especially game week 8, but then also potentially game week 9. But as the week went on before game week 8, I sort of switched from Son to Salah in terms of captaincy. I went with Salah in the end, which really gave me some points because Salah got 15 points, Son only got 3. Because Son, he doesn't play 90 minutes every game. He's getting subbed off after about 70 minutes. It still seems like he's struggling with some injuries. He's not 100% fully fit. It seems like he has been subbed off pretty much every single game so far this season, pretty early. And that's not really something you want to see from a potential captaincy option. So that's why he's dropped out. And I also dropped out Maddison, which is kind of harsh because they do have one really good fixture now against Fulham at home, especially in terms of attacking output. So you could potentially go with Maddison, but I just prefer Mitoma and Bowen for the long haul. I think Maddison is someone that you could potentially have for this one game week and then sell him for potentially Martinelli. That could be another way to go with this team. Maybe you want to go with that route instead. Or have Maddison for this game week if you wildcard this game week and then switch him to Mitoma next game week. I think that's also a decent chance or a decent option to do. But I think for this week wildcard draft, I just want to minimize the amount of extra transfers. I want to have as many transfers as possible so I can do more changes towards like game week 18, 19, 20 when we have a blank game week in game week 18 and a double game week in game week 20 most likely. So yeah, probably just save as many transfers as possible really. And that's why I've just gone with Mitoma from the get-go in this team. But yeah, you could have Maddison. I think Maddison is actually a decent shout. I think especially Son as well because he just played in the international break as well. He played now on, was it Tuesday, which is when I'm recording. He played in the national team game and he kind of hobbled off at the half, but he played on in the second half and scored a goal, I think, or even got an assist. But yeah, he's just proven that he is sort of like prone to getting subbed off and stuff. So yeah, and especially with the international break just finishing now as well, him playing back in Asia and having to travel back to Europe for the game against Fulham, then like the major game to have Son in, game week 9, is probably a game where he's most likely going to be subbed off pretty early in the game. So yeah, I think Son, you could definitely go without him currently. And yeah, I want to fit in Saka, I want to fit in Watkins. I would ideally want to fit in Trippier as well, so someone has to go. And that is Son in this instance, and Maddison as well. Not 100% sure about Spurs offensively either. I think that's kind of crazy to say considering they've scored like 2+ goals in pretty much every game so far. But I don't know. I think they've gotten lucky in some games against Liverpool when they got a 2-man advantage at some points, 1-man advantage with the Curtis Jones being sent off early. Against Arsenal, they got gifted a couple of goals as well, so especially the second goal. So yeah, I don't know. Spurs are still a really good team, and I think there is definitely a case to be made to have still Son and Maddison in your team, but I think there's just so many good midfielders, so I just want to maximize the output really going forward. And I think Arsenal, Brighton and West Ham just have better fixtures from now going forward than Spurs have, so that's why Son and Maddison have dropped out. Udogie also has dropped out, but that's mainly just due to me finding Pedro Porro to be a better asset. So yeah, 3 Spurs players have dropped out, but I have added a Spurs player in Pedro Porro. And I still think Udogie, Son and Maddison are still viable options. So yeah, even though I've removed them from my team, don't take that as a sign that you have to sell them, especially if you're not on the wildcard. Definitely someone that you can keep. It's a bit different what you're doing on a wildcard compared to what you do if you just have a regular team and you're selling players. So yeah, definitely keep your Tottenham Spurs players for this game week if you have them already. But if you're on the wildcard, I think you could go without them. Then we have another striker that I did mention. Maybe I want to downgrade a midfielder and have Alvarez instead rather than Archer. Because, yeah, I'm not 100% sure about Archer in terms of him playing for Sheffield United and being playing for a really bad team. I think Archer is a really good player, but I think he just plays for a really bad team. So yeah, maybe you want to have a more cut-price midfielder instead, because you know Cole Palmer is 4.9, takes penalties and plays every game for Chelsea, it seems like. That seems like good value. Thomas Souček as well has looked really good for West Ham for 4.9. He's a decent option. If you go a bit higher in terms of price, you can have someone like Pedro Neto for 5.7. He's also a really good option that you could potentially have rather than Bowen, and then upgrading Archer to Alvarez. So yeah, I think Alvarez is a really tough cut in this team, and I have Alvarez in my current team, in my own team for FPL, and I'm not going to sell him because I still think they have really good fixtures in terms of offense. Brighton at home is really good for them. Man United away as well, they can easily score some goals, and then Bournemouth at home is also a really good fixture for Alvarez. So I think the next 3 are really good for Alvarez, but But yeah, I think Watkins is slightly preferred currently with his good fixtures. And that's why Alvarez has dropped out. But I could definitely make a case for having Alvarez on top of Watkins and just downgrading one of the midfielders. But currently, I just really like the likes of Mitoma, Bowen, and Saka. Just enough, and Diaby and Salah, obviously, to have those guys rather than having Alvarez on top of Watkins. Then we have Matt Turner, who I just mentioned earlier. He's going to be dropped at some point, most likely. Vlachodimos is his name? Odysseus Vlachodimos for Nottingham Forest. It seems like he's going to be the starting goalkeeper at some point. And I think Strakosha has just better value, especially for someone that's going to be a starter for about the same time as Turner, most likely as well. So that's why he has dropped out. And then finally we have Anderson, it's not Anderson from Crystal Palace that I've dropped out. It is the midfielder Anderson from Newcastle. He was actually the cut price midfielder I had in the last weekly wildcard draft to make room for Alvarez in attack. But now I feel like there are some good options, especially with Mitoma now getting better fixtures, and Bowen as well, where I kind of don't want to have a cut price midfielder. I just want to have like a really strong midfield, so that's why I've dropped out Anderson as well. So those are the players that I've dropped out. I've mentioned a couple popular players like Trippier, who I ideally would like to have in my squad, but he's just a bit too pricey. He has been overperforming his underlying stats so far. And he might continue to do that because he is just a really good player and he's going to get a lot of bonus points. But yeah, I prefer to have better attacking options than defensive options, to be honest, especially for the cut price defensive options that we do have. Cash, Gabriel, Bertoporo, like I mentioned, Udogi, like I mentioned, Estupinian, if he's back in Game Week 11 or so, he's going to be a really good attacking option as well. So I think there's just too many good, cheaper defensive options to have Trippier in the squad. But yeah, that's why I'm going against Trippier. Could also make a case for David Raya in goal. He's a decent bonus point magnet as well, but I think now we have Areola with his good fixtures. I just think it's pretty easy to just go with the cheapest possible goalkeeper, seeing as the goalkeepers can't really get that many points, especially someone like Raya, who's not going to get that many saves and penalty saves and stuff like that, most likely. So yeah, I just prefer Areola. You could make a case for someone like Zinchenko or Ben White even, who's a bit more pricey in defense as well, on top of Gabriel, or potentially Saliba as well, who's going to be nailed and have some goal threat as well. But yeah, I prefer to just go with, especially just for the flexibility of potentially getting Martinelli if he starts playing really well. I just like having that third Arsenal spot open just in case something like that happens. And that's why I don't really want to have someone like Raya or Ben White or any other defender. I think that's pretty much it. I don't think there are that many players to talk about either. Apart from that, you have the likes of Darwin and Luis Diaz as well for Liverpool. Could definitely make a case for those guys as well, but yeah, I think there are just more secure players with different teams, with other teams that play pretty much nailed every single game. You can't really expect any attacking Liverpool player apart from Salah to play every single game, so that's why I only have Salah offensively. But yeah, Tsimikas as well, I should mention him. He's probably going to be the starting left back for Liverpool going forward now, with Andy Robertson being injured. So he's also someone you could consider in defense, potentially ahead of Burn. I think that would be where I would lean to. Or if you have some money spare in the bank, you could have Tsimikas rather than Branthwaite as well. But I think this team is around 100 million, so I didn't want to go really overboard when it comes to team value. So yeah, if you can afford Tsimikas, he is definitely a good option as well. So I think that pretty much covers it. It's been 38 minutes just about of a video, so I hope you enjoy. I hope you stay tuned for the videos coming up this week as well. I'm going to have the FPL Scope podcast put out tomorrow with Kevin, and then Friday, I'm going to post my team selection video for Game Week 9 as well, where I look at my current team, where I still have my wildcard intact, and I'm still not planning on using it in Game Week 9 or Game Week 10. Probably just going to save it until I need it, or until Game Week, Game Week 19, so I can prepare for the double Game Week 20 after the blanking Game Week 18 for Man City. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this weekly wildcard draft. I'll see you next time. See ya, and goodbye.